Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 74th episode of the Spiritual Brainstorm. In this episode, I'd like to again revisit the little diagram that I drew and explicit a bit how um, God Source sort of experiences itself through this structure that I drew. Because obviously, this idea of simultaneous experience and an eternal present, and what I said about God Source sort of focusing on itself, having this effect of unblurring itself by experiencing itself, is a little vague, and I think I sort of have the kind of right image to illustrate it. So, as I said, basically, right here in the middle is where time flows infinitely fast and where zero or nothingness becomes instantly infinity or everything in a fully conscious way, and vice versa. So there's two movements here. And I also said that because time flows infinitely fast and all of the different structures or layers that are building reality in this holon kind of logic appear instantly. The, the photon, vibrations, photon, quarks, atoms, molecules, living cells, humans, etc. Everything appearing instantly, but then instantly also expanding its consciousness so fast that it becomes everything without the experience of transitioning from these states. And I drew a spiral in the last diagram, but a spiral implies a linear experience. But a linear experience is only possible when these have started to explore themselves and have some kind of experience. And so what happens initially is that basically the universe or God source experiences itself this way, um, in all layers simultaneously. And so basically, consciousness grows from that thin line to going as far as possible in the experience to the point where it can create a linear story or the illusion of continuity, which is the densest experience, which is where we are at. From these experiences where they basically start exploring themselves, and this expands to the point where here in this part you can create a continuous experience because they sort of merge and touch each other, um, here in these sort of points. And again, there's this process where consciousness streams through this with nothingness consciousness and everything consciousness, which meet here and go into the experience. And then when that form kind of dies, then the consciousness separates back into infinite consciousness and zero, nothing consciousness. The nothing consciousness sort of provides knowledge and information about that experience to lower experiences, lower level experiences for them to evolve. And the higher level sort of version of the consciousness that was attached to one of those forms then explores, contributes to exploring the higher part here, like that of the photon. And that goes on until you can actually, they've experienced themselves enough for there to be able to manifest or materialize a linear kind of story out of this exploration. So that's how I view this process. And again, always a back and forth between all of these layers. The last little thing that I wanted to say is what's really interesting is once you um, transition to the other part of the hourglass, as I call it, from life onwards, then you start finding in the beings that materialize, like for instance human beings, elements that remind you of the macro in the micro. So how does that work? Humans have, of course, the micro elements of cell and biology within them, but that doesn't explain, for instance, the structures that are found in our brains, which are completely mysterious and absolutely amazing. And that neural network of neurons, as I've explained in other videos and as is explained in many other articles, looks much more like this the links between galaxies in the universe. And if you look at the map of the universe and how galaxies are sort of linked to each other via these sort of, bridges, or I don't know how you call them, it very much resembles a neural network. And so, as within, so without applies when you're on this side of the hourglass, because that's where these micro and macro start to kind of merge and feed off of each other. And the planets become, when you have a conscious solar system, conscious planet, conscious galaxy, they can manipulate the micro within them. Whereas when you're in the unconscious part, the macro cannot really manipulate the micro and vice versa. They just have their separate experiences where they first and foremost have to find harmony and the rules that apply to quarks and galaxies. And when subparticles can organize in a harmonious fashion, then galaxies as well. And there's a relationship between those two. When the atoms can organize in a harmonious way, then the star can also emerge. When the molecules arrange in a harmonious fashion, then stable planets can emerge. And once you transition to the other part, then you start having a manifestation of the micro and the macro together fusing into beings that take on the aspects of both. And so what we really are, beyond the form that we perceive, is a conscious planet. And the form that it takes is through human beings. But ultimately, we are just a conscious planet, eventually going into a conscious solar system if we start to reach out to consciousnesses that are tied to the different planets of the solar system, which had civilizations on them in another dimension and or another time, beyond time and space, and find a harmonious interaction between all of those. And that's far into the future. So right now we only have to worry about getting towards this threshold right here, which is first and foremost by finding the rules for achieving harmony with each other, and then we become a conscious planet, fully fledged. So I hope this was interesting, and talk to you in the next video.